My name's Jason Callahan. I'm 34, single, and for most of my extended family, a bit of a mystery. To them, I'm the guy who works in real estate and shows up at reunions once a year, then disappears again into his simple life. What they don't know is that I built a quiet hospitality empire over the past decade. I own a chain of boutique hotels, high-end, understated, private. And I prefer it that way. The truth is, I used to be close to my family. But over the years, after my parents passed and I became financially independent, I noticed something. The more successful I became, the less kindly they treated me. Maybe they sensed the change, maybe they resented it. Either way, the small jabs started. Comments like, must be nice not to have real responsibilities, or still no girlfriend. You must be living the stress-free life. This year, I received the usual invitation to our annual family reunion. Tara, my cousin, was in charge of planning it. She's one of the more dominant voices in the family, loud, self-important, and not great at hiding how little she thinks of me. She booked the event at a budget-friendly hotel near the coast. When I opened the email with the itinerary, I had to smile. The hotel she picked. One of mine. The Baystone Retreat, my first ever property, in fact. It was my baby. And she had no idea I owned it. I didn't say a word. I called the GM, Avery, and told her not to reveal anything. Just treat me like a normal guest, I said. Give me whichever room they assign. Are you sure? She asked, clearly concerned. You know some of the back rooms are. I know, I said. I want to see how this plays out. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I wasn't angry. But over the years, I'd grown curious. Curious about how they really saw me, how they treated people when they believed there was nothing to gain. When the day came, I packed light and drove myself to the resort, no chauffeur, no assistant. Just me and a weekend bag. I arrived early, before most of the family, and greeted Avery at the front desk. She smiled knowingly and handed me the keycard. Room 107, she said. You're in the laundry wing. Of course. I nodded. Perfect. What awaited me over the next 3 days would test my patience, reveal hidden truths, and ultimately change the dynamic of our family forever. But at that moment, I simply carried my bag down a quiet hallway and entered the smallest, darkest room in my own hotel. And I kept my mouth shut. Room 107 wasn't horrible, but it was far from comfortable. It had no view, just a narrow window looking out at a gravel maintenance alley. The air conditioning rattled slightly, and the mattress had clearly been one of the older ones we hadn't replaced yet. It even shared a wall with the laundry room, so every 30 minutes, I heard the rhythmic thump-thump of towels being dried. I didn't complain. I unpacked, changed into a casual button-up, and made my way to the resort's main restaurant, where dinner was being held. As I walked in, I heard Tara's voice immediately. There he is. The last one to show up. What a surprise. She was wrong. I'd been here hours before her. But I just smiled and took a seat at the long table. Most of the family had already gathered. Aunt Susan, who always had something critical to say, Uncle Greg, whose jokes usually came at someone else's expense, and a dozen cousins, in-laws, and second cousins I barely saw outside these events. There was a seating arrangement, of course. Tara and her husband, Darren, sat at the center with the best view of the gardens. I was on the far end, squished between a coat rack and the swinging door to the kitchen. Someone even asked if I was staff when I first sat down. Dinner was buffet style. As I returned to my seat with a modest plate, I overheard Uncle Greg say to Darren, "You'd think Jason would have offered to chip in. His what, mid-30s and still just drifting?" Darren chuckled. "I think he's a teacher or something." Tara said he lives in a rental, no real assets. Figures. No wonder he's alone. They didn't whisper. I took a bite of roasted chicken and kept my face neutral. Then Tara stood up and tapped her glass. "Okay, everyone. Before dessert, I just wanted to give a little toast. Planning this reunion was a huge task, but I managed to negotiate a 15% discount with the hotel manager. Can you believe that? I told her we were a big family with limited means. And she caved. Never underestimate the power of persistence. Everyone clapped. I took a sip of water and met Avery's gaze from across the room. She was standing near the service door, clearly holding back laughter. Also, Tara continued, I assigned the rooms myself, so let me know if there are any issues, but I made sure the couples and families had the best ones. Jason, I hope you don't mind the smaller room. Since you're alone and all. Not at all, I said, smiling. It's perfect. I meant that. It was the perfect vantage point to observe the dynamics I'd long suspected were beneath the surface. Little acts of exclusion disguised as planning, jokes that weren't jokes, and a subtle but persistent dismissal of who I was simply because they didn't understand who I had become. Later that evening, as we gathered around the outdoor fire pit, someone handed out room keys to the few who had just arrived. My cousin Daniel, who had arrived late and unannounced, was given the executive suite, my executive suite. Tara said, he came from out of state. We wanted him to be comfortable. That night, as I lay in bed, the sound of the industrial dryer thumping through the wall, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions, amusement, disappointment, and an odd sense of anticipation. They thought I was nobody, and that gave me all the power in the world. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a walk along the property. I passed by couples enjoying their balconies, kids splashing in the pool, and a few early risers sipping hotel coffee in their robes. All of it was mine, at least on paper. But none of my family knew. I passed by the front desk and nodded to Avery, who looked amused. Holding up okay in room 107, she whispered. Could use a window that doesn't face a dumpster, I said with a smirk. You're too patient, she replied. If it were me. That's the point, I said. Let's see what they reveal when they think I'm just average. Breakfast was casual. I sat alone at a corner table. No one invited me over. Not Tara, not Susan, not even my childhood cousin Dean, who I used to share comic books with as a kid. As I ate, I overheard more than I probably should have. From the next table, Aunt Susan's voice drifted over. Honestly, if Jason hasn't figured out life by now, he never will. I mean, what does he even do? He said real estate or something, Tara replied. But I googled him once. Nothing comes up. It's probably just a cover for, I don't know, freelance work or unemployment. Poor thing, Susan sighed dramatically. He looks tired. Lonely, too. Tired? Maybe. Lonely? Not really. I had an incredible support system outside this circle, friends, mentors, and a life I chose. But hearing that from blood relatives still stung more than I expected. What made it worse was how casually they said it. Like my worth was defined by what they thought I did, not who I was. Later that day, the family went on a group kayaking excursion organized by the hotel. I stayed back, pretending to feel under the weather. Instead, I joined Avery for a tour of the back-of-house operations. I visited the kitchen, greeted the chef I hired years ago, checked maintenance logs, and reviewed the renovation notes for the upcoming suite expansion. Every staff member treated me like royalty, but out of sight from my family. That was the agreement. That night, there was a bonfire and family talent show. Tara's kids sang off-key, Uncle Greg told a painfully long joke, and Darren tried to juggle oranges. I offered to take photos for everyone. They handed me phones without hesitation, like I was the hotel photographer. And I didn't mind. Not yet. But the final straw came when my little cousin Lexi, just 16 and too honest for her own good, sat beside me and asked, Jason, why does Aunt Tara treat you like a stranger? I smiled gently. I guess I'm not very interesting to them. But, you're nice. You always come, and you listen. You brought Grandma that book she wanted last year. I nodded. Sometimes people only notice you when you're loud or flashy. She leaned in and whispered, well, I think they're wrong. You're kind of mysterious, in a cool way. Out of everyone, she was the only one who'd bothered to ask anything real. That night, I made a quiet call to Avery. Let's go ahead with it, I said. You sure? She asked, voice cautious. Yeah. Let's prepare the rooftop lounge for brunch tomorrow. Full setup. Put it under my name. And the guest list. Everyone. But this time, make sure they know exactly who invited them. The next morning, I dressed in a light grey suit and walked to the rooftop lounge just before 10 a.m. The sun was soft, the breeze was warm, and the setup was flawless. Crisp white linens, a mimosa bar, a custom omelette station, and fresh pastries from the resort's exclusive bakery. A small golden placard at the entrance read, Private Brunch, hosted by Mr. Jason L. Bennett. One by one, family members began to arrive, first Aunt Susan and Uncle Greg, then my cousins, then the stragglers like Darren and, of course, Tara. At first, they looked confused. This wasn't on the schedule, was it? Susan asked. I thought brunch was downstairs, Darren added. Avery greeted them with a polished smile. This is a private event. You're all invited, compliments of Mr. Bennett. Tara frowned. Mr. Bennett. Avery gestured toward me with practiced elegance. The owner of this resort. Dead silence. It was like the air got knocked out of the room. You could feel the ripple of realization pass from one person to another. Tara blinked. Jason? I smiled and nodded. Surprise. But, you're the owner? Of the whole place? Yes. Since 4 years ago. I bought it when the previous owners retired. Didn't think to mention it, I was just here to enjoy the reunion. Uncle Greg let out a nervous chuckle. No wonder the service has been so perfect. Aunt Susan muttered, I thought you were, just a guest. I was, I said calmly. Room 107. Lovely view of the dumpsters. Tara turned pale. You let me assign you that room? You insisted, I replied, not unkindly. Said the single guy should get the smallest one. Nobody said anything. Lexi looked like she was holding back a victorious grin. I gestured to the lavish spread behind me. Please. Eat. I arranged this for everyone. No hard feelings. They moved stiffly at first, then eased into it. Food has a way of softening awkwardness. Tara eventually made her way to me, glass of juice in hand. Why didn't you say anything? Would you have treated me differently if I had? She hesitated. Maybe. That's what I was afraid of. I wasn't trying to be cruel, she added quickly. I just didn't think. I know, I said. That's the point. For once, she didn't have a comeback. The rest of brunch was oddly pleasant. Polite. A little quieter than usual. No passive-aggressive comments. No jabs about my career. In fact, people were suddenly interested in what I did. Greg asked about expansion plans. Susan asked about wedding venues. Darren asked for investment tips. Funny how that works. As the event wrapped up, Lexi gave me a tight hug. I knew you were cool. I laughed. Thanks, kiddo. The rooftop brunch wound down slowly. People lingered, not because they wanted more food, but because no one quite knew what to say. Conversations were cautious now. Some were apologetic. Others felt performative. I played nice. I smiled, I answered questions, I posed for pictures. But I noticed the shift. Suddenly I was impressive, ambitious, generous. Not because I had changed, but because their perception of me had. After everyone had gone back to their rooms to pack for checkout, I took a slow walk down to the staff office. Avery handed me the final guest ledger for review. Everything smooth, she asked. Too smooth, I joked. Then I paused. Actually, one last thing. She raised an eyebrow. I want to comp one room. Room 318. Lex's. Avery grinned. Done. And I already added a spa voucher for her mom. She's not bad, just exhausted. I nodded. Thanks. An hour later, I was loading my bag into my SUV when Tara came jogging over. Jason, wait. I turned slowly. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she said, fidgeting. Not just about the room. About everything. I guess I had this image of you, and I never really looked closer. I gave her a long, measured look. It's easy to underestimate someone when you're too busy feeling superior. She winced. I deserved that. I'm not trying to be cruel, I said. But I'm also not going to pretend this didn't hurt. She looked genuinely embarrassed. Can we start over? I gave her a half smile. Maybe. But not here. Not like this. Relationships, real ones, aren't built over brunch. They're built on respect, all year round. She nodded slowly. Then I got in my car and drove away. I didn't look back. Later that evening, I got a text from Lexi. You were the coolest part of the trip. Also, everyone's still talking about it. It's hilarious. Face with tears of joy. I replied. Next year, maybe I'll let them have the good room. Maybe. And with that, I closed the chapter on this reunion. Not bitter, just better. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't anger or confrontation. It's quiet success. It's being underestimated, and then blowing every assumption to pieces.